I've scaled my real estate wholesaling business to 7 figures per year consistently, and I've also helped other businesses 2, 3, or even 5x in just 6 months. And this doesn't just work for businesses doing under $1 million a year. We've helped businesses doing $2, $3, $5 million a year by fixing their sales process. And today, what I'm going to cover is the exact step-by-step process that I use when I go inside of a business to help them 2, 3, or even 5x their business. So there's 7 metrics that you need to track inside of your wholesaling or flipping business. Number 1 is how many leads you get. Now, this is anybody that raises their hand and says that they want to sell their property, whether it's a form online or whether it be, a text, a cold call, something like that. Then you've got your qualified leads. So qualified leads are going to be verified sellers who want to sell at any time. I don't care if they need to sell in the next 6 months or if they are selling tomorrow. A qualified lead is going to be anybody that you actually spoke to. They are a verified seller and they do want to sell at any time. And then you've got your appointment set. So what we consider an appointment, they have to meet these 5 things. We call it a MOTA, okay? This is our MOTA. They have to have enough equity for us to be able to buy the house. They have to have a real reason to sell. That's motivation. They need to be the owner of the property. They need to be selling in the next 90 days, and they need to have some actionability. What actionability means is that when we ask them, hey, what happens if you don't sell? They're going to say, hey, we are going to sell the property, or, we already have a property lined up. This excludes people that are saying, I've had the property for 6 years. It's a rental. It's completely cash flowing. I just wanted to see what you have to offer. If I don't sell it, no big deal. Just keep it, right? We want people that are actually looking to sell the property. That's our appointment set. Now, appointment attended is obviously anyone that showed up for the appointment. It's really important to know that metric. And then the offer is anybody that we gave an exact amount to, not a ballpark or anything like that. Contracts, anyone that we got signed, and then closed is obviously revenue coming into your account. And so when we're going over these metrics, the metrics that we need to hit in order to scale a business profitably is we need to hit our lead to qualified lead ratio. This needs to be no less than 65%. So out of all of the leads you get, you need to have at least 65% of these leads turning into qualified leads, meaning you spoke to them, they are a seller, and they do want to sell. From your qualified lead to appointment set. Now, I have an 8-page document with 8 steps per each phase that I reserved specifically for our inner circle members. It would take me 3 to 4 hours to go over this today. And so there are some nuances, whether you're going in person or you're going virtual. But I'll give you a good baseline if you wanted to do like hybrid, if you're virtual and in person, a good baseline is 40%. 60% is where we want to aim for virtual. It might be closer to like 20 or 30% in person. I break that out on my document, but just to give you guys a good average, 40% appointments, qualified appointment to appointment attended. And then we want to shoot for 90% of all of our appointments that we set, we get them attended. And from every appointment attended to offer, this is a really easy metric to get to 100%. You're already on the appointment. We want to close 20. And then out of those, we want to have 75% turn into revenue, turn into deals. Now, 25% are going to fall out due to title issues. The price might be too high. Something changes with the seller. The conditions worse than you thought. 25% of your contracts will fall out. Now, if you're locking up 100 contracts and you're only closing 50, you have a problem with either your acquisitions process or your dispo process, which we're going to dive into shortly here. So for the first metric, lead to qualified lead. Okay, what if our lead to qualified lead is under 65%? I'm going to give you guys 3 actionable steps that you can take today to fix that number. Now, the first one is the most important. If you guys are not doing this and your lead to qualified is under 65%, you need to start doing this today. And that is speed to lead. Okay, this needs to be 3 minutes or less. Speed to lead needs to be 3 minutes or less. And so the way that we do it on my team is we have a Zapier that as soon as the lead gets created, it goes to a Google chat. Now, I've got 4 setters that are monitoring that chat at all times. If somebody's on a call, somebody else will pick it up. Okay. And all they have to do is hit a little thumbs up button just to claim the lead. As soon as they hit that thumbs up button and they claim it, they need to call it within 60 seconds. All they need to do is copy and paste the address, put it into Salesforce, and they start calling. If you're not doing 3 minutes speed to lead, you're always going to run into issues. And more importantly, if you're doing 3 minutes speed to lead, not only will you have a higher pickup rate, this is when the seller is actively looking to sell their property. If you call them an hour later, they've probably completely forgotten about everything going on. They might have their kids pulling on them. They might be bringing their kids to school, or maybe they're working now. And it's going to be hard to have a really good conversation. And so that's the first thing that I would do right off the gate. The second thing I want to do is I want to make sure I have good automations. Now, what does that mean? For my automations, they need to receive an SMS and an email 1 minute from filling out the form. Okay, so my SMS, it's really simple. It just says, hey, Sally, I saw that you just filled out a form on our website. Were you looking for selling your property, or were you just looking at some options? Okay, something super neutral to just get them to respond. It also says that if they're calling us outside of business hours, which for us is 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., that somebody will call them back the next day. They get an email with something similar, and then 4 hours later, they get another email that has a video explaining what the next steps look like and have all of our testimonials and reviews. So that warms up the audience. Okay. Lastly, on the lead to qualified lead, you want to make sure you have a good and healthy call cadence. Now, what does that look like? I'll tell you, for the longest time, I taught this as well, and a lot of other wholesalers were teaching this, is that their call cadence was calling 3 times, triple dialing 3 to 6 times a day. That does not work. It is stupid. It does not work anymore today in 2025. And if you guys are watching this in the future, I guarantee you it still doesn't work. Okay, so the telecommunication services are getting smarter. And if you start triple dialing, they automatically mark your number as spam. And you do not want that. Okay, so the proper call cadence, and this is coming straight from the CEO of Dialer.io, who's done millions of dials through his CRM. The best call cadence is 3 times day 1, 2 times day 2, and then 1 time day 3 through day 14. Okay, so if you are triple dialing your leads, you are going to get spam flagged. And when you get spam flagged, it might sound like the phone is ringing. However, on the other end, the carrier is just blocking the call and your calls are not going through. So if you have a pickup rate less than 18%, you're probably getting spam flagged and you need to change your call cadence. So the way that we do this is 3 times day 1. If they come in like the night before, we'll call them at 8 a.m., we'll call them at noon, and then we'll call them again between 6 to 8 p.m. Okay. And so that way we're calling everyone in the morning, everyone in the afternoon on their lunch break, and everyone in the evening. And that has gotten us very, very good high pickup rates and high lead to qualified lead ratio. So if you have a low lead to qualified lead ratio, those are the first 3 things I would do right off the gate. Okay, next is your qualified lead to appointment ratio. Again, this should average to about 40%. If you're doing virtual, you should be at a minimum of 60%. And then if you're doing in person, you should be at a very minimum of 20%, but you can get a heck of a lot higher. You can get 40% in person. So the easiest way to solve this problem, and this is especially if you have a team, is you want to identify weak links. Okay, now what does that mean? That could be weak links in your marketing channel, or weak links inside of your sales process, or SDRs. And so what I mean by that is the first thing I'm going to look at is, are there any SDRs, meaning a sales development rep or a lead manager? Are there any SDRs that are actually hitting that 60% qualified lead to appointment, virtual, or 20% in person? And if there are, then I just have to focus on the ones that aren't, whether cut them and then I go through and I hire a new one that can actually hit those metrics, or I train them. One or the other, neither is right or wrong, depending on how you feel you can actually train your sales development reps or your lead managers. The next thing I'll look at is my marketing channels. So are there any marketing channels where I'm actually hitting that 20 to 60% qualified to appointment if I'm going virtual or in person? And so if I'm doing pay-per-click, for example, and I'm getting a 40% in-person qualified lead to appointment ratio, well, can I just do more pay-per-click? Can I just double down on pay-per-click? Whereas I have SMS blasts where I'm getting, a 15%. I know that tells me I have a lot of waste inside of my company. And that's the easiest way, just to go in and go, okay, who's not actually hitting these metrics, or what channels are not hitting these metrics? Now, the next thing that I'll do is I want to do an audit of my SDRs. So if all of them aren't hitting, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back. I'm going to listen to 30 qualified leads. And yes, I know this is a lot of work, but this is what you need to do to actually improve this metric. And so I want to go back, listen to 30 qualified leads that weren't converted. And if I go through and I can book the appointment myself because I have a good sales process, then I know that, okay, it's the SDRs and I need to train them better. Okay. So if I go through and I say, hey, I just went through 30 of my qualified leads that didn't book into appointments, I have calls with them and I end up booking, I don't know, let's say we out of those 30, what's 60% of 30? We'll do some quick math right here, zero point 0.6. So if I end up booking 18, well, then I know right off the gate, okay, it was my SDRs. Now, if it's me, this is the last part that I'll go and let's say you don't have SDRs, you don't have lead managers, anyone that you have booking appointments for you. What I need to do is I need to audit my own sales calls. And so there's a few things that I look for when I'm auditing my own sales calls. The first thing is when I spoke to that lead, did I properly lower any resistance? Okay. We have tons of videos on this channel on actually lowering resistance with sellers. If you're triggering sales resistance in the first 7 seconds, the sellers are just going to shut down on you. And if you're going through the 4 pillars and asking, hey, what's the condition of the property? What's the time frame? What's your price? And why are you looking to sell? You're triggering resistance. I can promise you that. And you're never going to get the qualified lead to appointment ratio that you need to run a profitable business and hit 7 figures a year. So if you're struggling with your sales process, you can drop inside the link. We have a Skool community that you guys can go inside of and get sales training. Everyone inside of our group that actually implements the sales process, they're able to get that 60% lead to qualified lead to appointment, or 20% if you're in person, just by following the simple sales process. So if you're struggling with that, make sure you get the proper training so that way you can improve this metric. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm lowering resistance. Okay. The next thing I want to do is I want to know how well am I clarifying and am I probing on the problem. Okay. So if someone tells me, yeah, I'm just selling, house is just a lot right now. And then I go and I ask them, okay, well, what's your time frame on selling this? They say, well, it's 6 months. Okay, well, that's because I didn't clarify and probe enough on the problem to make them create urgency, which is the last step, which is being able to create urgency in your process. Okay. And the way that you do that is by helping the seller realize their pain points. When the seller realizes their pain points, instead of asking, what's your time frame on selling, you ask, well, how soon would you like to get out of this property so you no longer have to deal with all of the maintenance and the high mortgage payments? They are going to say, I would like to get out of this as soon as possible, versus if you just ask them a blanket question about the time frame on the property. So those are the 3 things that I want to do if my qualified lead to appointment ratio is too low. Okay, next we're going to go over appointments set to appointment attended. So getting people to actually show up for the appointments. Now, the first thing that I want to do here is I want to make sure that my speed to appointment is 24 hours or less. So every day that goes by, your appointment set to appointment attended drops. So if you're booking appointments for a week out, you're going to have very, very low show up rates. And so I want to do speed to appointment within 24 hours. And what really helped us is as soon as an appointment gets booked, what we do is we call the appointment, we call the seller and we say, hey, I saw we had an appointment on the calendar for Wednesday. It's Monday today. I just had something open up later this afternoon. Are you available? So we'll push all of our appointments up. That one thing alone should be able to get your appointment set to appointment attended up to 90%, which is the metric that we're shooting for here. The next thing I want to make sure is we have appointment reminders. This is super simple if you're using a CRM. I recommend ReSimpli for this. You can go inside of your ReSimpli account and you can set up appointment reminders. But if you're using Salesforce, Podio, Go High Level, every single CRM, they have the ability to do appointment reminders. So what we do is if they're in person, so we've got our in person and we've got our virtual. Okay. So for both of them, we want to send a reminder 24 hours prior. Okay. So these are going to be both 24 hours prior. Now, the only difference between in person and virtual is in person, I'll also send a reminder morning of, and then virtual, I'll do 2 hours and 30 minutes. Okay. Now, why wouldn't I do 30 minutes on an in-person? The acquisitions manager or myself, if I'm going to the appointments, they've already gone through and they've started their drive over to the appointment. So I don't want them canceling right before. We'll also call them the morning of, and I'll go over that next. But you need to have appointment reminders. You need to have appointment reminders and appointment confirmation. So I'll go over 4 things on this one. So appointment confirmation. One of the things that really helped us, and it's helped our students as well, getting their appointment set to attended, is when they're booking the appointment. As long as you're in a market where you've got somewhat sophisticated sellers that use a Google Calendar, what we'll do is we'll say, hey, I'm going to send you a calendar invite. Can you make sure that you got it? They're like, they look through, they got it. And would you do me a quick favor? You see the going button right there? Would you just check that you're going? My acquisitions manager has a crazy assistant. If the assistant doesn't see that you're going to be going, they're just going to take it off the calendar. And so that little check of them saying they're going, it subconsciously says, hey, there's another step that gets me that much further into my commitment level. Okay. If they do not have a Google Calendar, an Outlook calendar, or some sort of digital calendar that they use, what you want to do is, hey, can you write this down? And is there anything else that would come up that would cause you to miss this appointment? Just asking that question, they are going to say, no, there's nothing that would come up. And then you will be that much further and that much closer into getting your appointment set to a attended ratio up to 90%. And that's the minimum metric that we need to actually be profitable. Okay. So that's appointment confirmations. And the last thing is a pre-appointment checklist. Okay. So this is really helpful, is to have yourself, or if you have an acquisitions manager, do a pre-appointment checklist. So when I'm calling, what I want to make sure is that I've got the time frame, meaning that this appointment is going to take anywhere from 45 to 90 minutes. And if it's in person, sometimes we'll say, 45 minutes to 2 hours, depending on, how long our sales process is. A lot of times for in-person, we do end up going 2 hours, and we want to make sure they have that time available. Okay. The other thing we're going to test is their actionability. And so what that means, when we call them, we want to make sure that if we agree on a price, there's nothing that would stop them from being able to sell the property. The property doesn't need to go through probate. There's no title issues or anything that would stop us from actually being able to buy the property. And then we just want to make sure that all of the owners are present. Okay. So anybody that needs to sign is there and they are present. So that way we don't need to reschedule the appointment. So that goes into our pre-appointment checklist. We want to call, make sure that they're aware of the appointment. That's the first thing. Make sure that they're aware of how long the appointment's going to take. Make sure that they have actionability to actually sell the property, and all of the owners that can help and can sell the property will be there and will be attending. So those are the 4 things that you want to do to get your appointment set to attended up to 90% if it's not there already. Okay, so once we get our appointment set to appointment attended up to 90%, this is a metric that I see people really mess up, especially the high level companies, the guys that are doing $1 million, $2, $3, $4, $5 million a year. What they do is they go on a lot of appointments, but they don't give an offer on each one. And I remember talking to one of my mentors. He was the old CEO of 7th Level. His name's Marco. And he told me, man, you wholesalers, you cheat. I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, you don't make an offer on everyone. It would be like if you sold a high ticket product, you had 10 appointments that showed up, and you just decided on which ones you're actually going to present the pitch to and which ones you're not. And you do that based on some level of motivation. If they're attended, if you're going to an appointment, the easiest way to fix this number is as simple as it sounds: make a freaking offer. If you're there, make the offer at the appointment. No exceptions, no excuses. Just go ahead and make the offer once you're there. If they were committed to hearing an offer while you're at the appointment, I am going to go ahead and make the offer. I'm not going to push it out. I'm not going to go and wait for photos or go talk to my partner and then call them back. If I am in front of a seller and they want to sell their house, I am going to make an offer on that appointment. Now, that goes into our next question was, well, what happens if they really don't have any motivation or they're not qualified? The next thing I want to do is I want to make sure that they are meeting a MOTA. So any appointment that I have booked on my calendar, again, they need to have equity, they need to have motivation, they need to have ownership, they need to be selling the property in the next 90 days, and they need to have some actionability that they're actually going to sell. Okay, so if I'm going on a bunch of appointments and every single one of them telling me like, hey, I don't care what your offer is, I'm not selling the property. Well, that's your core problem, right? They're not meeting a MOTA. So that's where I go back and I train my SDR team on getting my attended to offer up to that 100%. And I need to make sure that all of them are meeting a MOTA. A lot of times what I do is I do a weekly on Friday. I just go and review all of the appointments that were booked and just make sure that they were actually good appointments. They know what a good appointment looks like, and they know what a bad appointment looks like. So your attended to offer should be 100%. There's no reason that it should not be. Okay, so we've done everything to implement our appointments attended to offer. We've got that to 100%. Now, this is the metric where I see companies struggle with the most. This is the most common metric that I see companies struggle with, and that's the offer to contract. Now, offer to contract, you should be on average 20%. However, if you are in person, this should be higher. So if you're in person, I want to aim for 25 to 30%. And if I'm virtual, I want to be at 20%. Now, if I'm at anything less than 20%, I have a sales process issue. And if I'm in person, I'm less than 25, I have a sales process issue. So when you're going over your offer to contract, there's a bunch of things that you can do to fix this number. But the most important thing is going to be how well you are able to build a gap. Okay, so what that gap is when you're talking to your sellers, this is their current state. Okay, so this is their current state. This is where they're at now. And let's say they're here. And then this is their future state, which is where they want to be. Let's draw a dotted line. This is the gap. And so the further I can stretch out their current state from the future state, the more urgency they'll have and the bigger discounts that I'll be able to get. So step one is learning the process. And we have tons of videos on how to actually build this out. We have an entire community where you can learn how to build this gap. But it all comes down to this. How far can you stretch out their current state from their future state? The bigger that gap is, the more contracts you'll be able to lock up. And again, if you are going through and you're just asking them, hey, what's the condition of the property? What's your time frame? What's your motivation to sell? And what's your price? If you're going through that, you're never going to actually build the gap you need to close at 20 to 30%. You're always going to be struggling because you're not actually building any sort of gap. Now, the next thing I want to look at is my tonality. Okay. So how you ask the question is much more important than the questions you actually ask. So if I go ahead and I ask a seller, so why are you looking to sell the property? They're going to give me a knee-jerk response because that's how I ask the question. So why are you looking to sell? I don't know. I just want to look at something different. Whereas if I go through, I understand their situation, I ask a question like this. So just to see how we can help, I guess what's the main reason that you're looking to sell the property now? Okay. Now, what did I do there? I used good tonality. I used verbal pacing to get them to think about the question. And when I ask the question the right way, they're going to give me the real answer, which is going to contribute to this gap that I'm talking about building. Okay. So if myself or my sales team, they're not using proper tonality, they're never going to get people to really open up about why they're looking to sell, and they won't be able to help them. Okay. Last thing I want to do is I want to make sure my team has an objection handling process and they are going through the objection handling process every single time. So the minimum that they need to understand how to overcome is they need to understand how to overcome price objections. They need to understand how to overcome, think about it. Okay, that's a huge one that we get. Oh, yeah, this sounds good. Let me just think about it. And they need to understand how to overcome partner and fear. And so I'll drop the link somewhere in this video. Maybe I'll just be able to put it up here. I have an entire video on objection handling, just going through price, think about it, partner, and fear, all of the different objections that you can get. Because even with price, you've got price, which is like a comparison. They're comparing it to comps in the area. You've got price, which is wants, and then you've got needs. Okay. So they need to have an objection handling process. If they can't objection handle, they're never going to close at 20 to 30%. Okay. And once I learned this is how I was able to get my offer to contract up to 33% because I learned how to do really basic objection handling techniques. Okay. So when your offer to contract is low, you want to first make sure that you're able to build a gap. If you're not able to build the gap, it's probably because your tonality or the questions you're asking. And if you're able to build a gap, you have good tonality, then you need to learn a good objection handling process because you're learning how to help sellers. The problem is you don't know how to overcome their objections and help them get what they really want. So those are the 3 steps that I would do. If my offer to contract is low, it's the same thing we do for all of our students. And finally, we've made it to our contract to close, the last step inside of our process. Now, I am going to give you the last thing I'm going to give you guys today is going to be the number one thing that you can do to improve your contract to close. And it's not what you may think. So let's go over some of the ones that may be obvious at first. If your contract to close sucks, meaning it's under 75%, virtual, you can sometimes get away with 65 because you're converting a little bit more of your leads. But if you're under 75%, what you want to do first is you want to check your underwriting. So what I like to do is if I like to put a list of all of my deals that fell out and then why. Okay. So if they're all falling out because they're just priced too high, well, that means that I'm not underwriting the properties properly. And I have to go back into my sales process because I'm not building a big enough gap to get these things at steep enough discounts. So that's the first thing that I'm going to look at. A lot of times that one domino solves all of your problems. You knock down that domino, you get properties at steep enough discounts, they are going to sell. Even if you don't have a huge buyers list, anything like that, if you just check your underwriting, you have good properties, you will be able to sell them. Okay. The next thing I want to do when I'm looking at my contract to close is I want to make sure that I am going through and I'm getting at least 4 offers per contract. If I'm not getting at least 4 offers, my dispo team, or if I'm doing dispo, I'm just not working my buyers hard enough. And so I want to make sure that I at least get 4 written offers, I should say, written offers from buyers. And if they're all coming in low, I say, hey, that's okay. Just give me an offer of what you could buy the property for. And that way I know what the actual valuation of the property is. Maybe I miscalculated my rehab. Maybe I miscalculated my after repair value. Okay. And the last one that I'm going to go over today, this is something that's not talked about anywhere that I've seen. But this is the number one thing that we've done and our students have done to improve their contract to close. And that's call all of your sellers weekly at a minimum. Now, why do I say this? If you are calling all of your sellers weekly, you're giving them updates throughout the process. When you need an extension or when you need a price reduction, they are going to be willing to work with you. Now, what most wholesalers do is they lock up the contract, and then the day before closing, they call them and they say, hey, we need to extend, or hey, we need to lower the price. And the sellers are furious, rightfully so. They should be furious. And so when we started calling our sellers weekly, we give them updates. If we need to ask for an extension, we do it 2 weeks out or sometimes 3 weeks out, depending on how long the escrow is. If we need to do a price reduction, we ask for that price reduction every single week. So we first tell them, hey, sent it out to our investors. Offers are coming in a little lower than we expected. We're going to keep working this. We might need to do a price reduction in the future. Okay. So that's the first thing that we do. The second thing we do is, hey, we've got some offers. We can take one right now. However, it's lower. We can continue working it or we can take it. And then the third week, we'll call them again. Hey, all of the offers still came in at this. If we want to sell the property, we've got one that we can move forward with in 7 days. We can still close on your timeline. However, we need to get it at this price. Okay. Super easy. Or we tell them, hey, we've got a buyer. We're moving forward with everything. This is what's going on. We're waiting for the HOA documents to come in. We're waiting for a 401k check to hit so that way they can close on the property. Right. So that way when we say, hey, the 401k check hasn't come in yet, we need to just extend another week. We've already prefaced them with that. We've already prepared them so that way it could extend. And this one thing alone has been the major thing that's helped us with our contract to close. It's helped us get steeper discounts on all of our deals because if we need to go in for reduction, we're able to. So make sure you're checking your underwriting, make sure you're getting 4 offers per contract, and then make sure you are calling all of your sellers weekly. Now, this is just the tip of the iceberg. These are just little tiny tidbits on what we go over inside of our advanced inner circle community. So if you guys are struggling with any of these metrics, make sure you check out our Skool community in the link below. You can sign up. You can start working on the things that you need to actually move the needle in your business. And if you're looking for some more advanced coaching inside of our Skool community, you can book a call with me so we can help you scale your business. That's all we have for today. This is John signing off.